Okay, hello everyone. Hopefully people have had a chance to log on. Others may join us in the next few minutes, so I may backtrack just a little bit, but let's go ahead and get started. Welcome again to those of you who have just joined us since the last time I spoke a couple minutes ago. Thank you for turning over your lunch if you're on the East Coast, or your breakfast if you are on the West Coast. But I appreciate you joining to hear a little bit more about the Bachelor's in Psychology program that we have at CUNY School of Professional Studies. So what I want to do at this time is to give you a little bit of background about our program, to tell you a little bit about our curriculum, and talk a little bit about what you can do with a psychology degree after you finish, and then to open it up so that I could answer any questions that you might have. And you can start sending them at any point in the talk, and I'll probably just wait till the end to kind of answer them all. Sometimes it helps if you want to just wait until the end to send the question, because it might be answered in the course of the webinar, but I'll leave that up to you. So just a little bit about our school. For those of you who are not familiar with CUNY, we are a consortium of well over 24 campuses in the New York area and all of the 5 boroughs. We are part of the CUNY Graduate School and University Center, which is where our graduate degrees mainly are distributed from. CUNY Graduate Center is located on 34th and 5th Avenue, for those of you who are local, right across the street from the Empire State Building, for those of you who are not. And we are located just about a block away on 6th Avenue and 31st Street. So it's a nice central location. We do have a physical campus because some of our programs are face-to-face. It just so happens that our psychology program is a fully online program. So I mentioned that just for people who are local or people who plan on coming into New York. You can always stop by the school and say hi, and we're happy to give you a little tour. If you are local, you're welcome to use our computer labs, our space for meetings, etc. So another thing I should mention is that we are accredited by Middle States Commission on Higher Education, and it's important that when you're doing your research and looking for a school that you look at the accreditation, and especially if you're planning on going to graduate school. If you are planning on going to a graduate school, what they're going to ask for is a bachelor's degree from an accredited university. So when you do your homework on a school, make sure to go to the section on their website about accreditation and do a little bit of reading and make sure that they are in fact accredited and what the accrediting body is. Middle States Commission on Higher Education is the highest accrediting body in our area, so we're very proud of that, and that goes CUNY-wide. So a little bit about our programs. We have 11 master's degree programs, and actually we're adding these on every semester, so our numbers are increasing faster than I can update our slides. But we also have 13 bachelor's degree programs and 17 certificate and advanced certificate programs. We have well over 2,700 students who are currently enrolled, and we do have financial aid, career services, tutoring, and advisement, both for our students who are out of the New York area and for students who are in the New York area. So again, you can access those services in person. You can also access them via the web and on the phone. So for our bachelor's in psychology program, we approach it the same way most programs approach psychology, is to think about it as the way that people behave and think and feel. We look at this in a broad range of ways, but we like to give students insight into motivation and learning and cognition, social behavior development. Those are really the foundational sort of cores of psychology. And then we'll talk in just a second about the specialized tracks that students can focus on, and those get into a little bit more of niche areas. But we like to give our students a very broad foundation in psychology, because while a lot of people think of psychology in terms of clinical psychology, so therapy, seeing patients, a lot of people think of Freud. It's probably the first thing people think of when they think of psychology. That is really only a small subset of what psychology is. There are tons of different areas in psychology. you know, sports psychology, you know, positive psychology, cognitive psychology, school psychology. I mean, the lists go on and on. So we give you that foundation, and then you can build on that into a specialized area. So our bachelor's in psychology program is not the only psychology bachelor's program in CUNY. We have many of them at a variety of our senior campuses around the 5 boroughs of New York, but ours is the only fully online program that exists in CUNY. And we really hope that what that offers students, especially students who are working students who need flexible schedules, who need degree completion, that it offers them an opportunity to finish a degree when they normally wouldn't be able to if they had to physically be present in a classroom several days a week. Our tuition and our scheduling is affordable and flexible. I'll talk a little bit more about scheduling because it does not mean that you can kind of do the work at your own pace. What it means is that you're able to log on to the course site at various times during the same week everyone's logging on. So I'll talk more about that, like I said, a little bit later. If you look at CUNY's bang for its buck, you'll see that there's no one that compares. CUNY is very affordable. We pride ourselves on that. We have a full-time tuition. We also have a by credit tuition, and you're welcome to look at that on our tuition page and take a look at that and how it compares to other schools. We welcome part-time students. So as long as students are taking one course, we're really happy with that. Sometimes students need to take time off. We do understand that, but our goal is to match you up with an advisor when you first come to SPS, and that advisor stays with you through your entire time with our school. And their job is really to guide you through navigating all of your coursework, trying to think about smart ways to stack your credits so that you can use some of your electives to focus on a minor, which is separate than the track that you focus on in psychology, so that when you leave, maybe you graduate with a bachelor's in psychology and a specialization in developmental psychology, but a minor in business, for example, or a minor in disability studies. So we try to figure out ways to get you the maximum number of credentials that we can using the amount of credits that you need to graduate, which is 120. So our courses are taught by both academics and practitioners, and many of those people are one and the same. So what we mean by that is that these are not people who have spent all of their time in what people often refer to as the ivory tower, just in academia, just teaching classes. They're people who are also out in the field, who are working in these areas, who are conducting really groundbreaking research in these areas. And we draw upon not just our CUNY faculty from all across the CUNY spectrum, but we also have people from outside of CUNY who teach for our course as well. So we offer a bachelor's degree with 3 tracks. Our tracks are psychopathology, psychological development, and organizational development, and I'll talk more about those in just a few minutes. I just want to do a quick FYI, a little plug, because I think it's never too early to start thinking about next steps. But we launched an MA in psychology program in spring of 2016, and that is also fully online. So it's something to consider maybe after you're done with this bachelor's, to start thinking about a master's degree. So the 3 tracks that we have in psychology are industrial organizational psychology, psychological development, and psychopathology. So I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to work my way up. Psychopathology is what I was talking about earlier. It's what people most likely think of when they think about psychology, which is studying the origins and the development and the manifestations and the treatment of mental disorders, behavioral disorders. So looking at things that are happening with people, whether it's maybe a personality disorder or it's a phobia or whatever it happens to be, and tracing that. How do you help people who are having these kinds of problems? What can psychology lend to that understanding? Then we have psychological development, and this is really a very broad and extremely flexible track to follow. So it covers human growth, and that growth includes social growth, cognitive growth, emotional growth, um, over the course of one's lifespan. So people who are focused on developmental psychology or psychological development are looking at people from infancy all the way through adulthood and aging. Oftentimes, they focus on one particular area of one's life, and that becomes a specialization, but that's not always the case. Some people keep their area quite broad, but many people do focus on a particular subset. So they may focus on geriatric care, so caring for people in their later stages of life. Those people will often find themselves working in nursing homes, places like that. But there are people who focus on the opposite side of the spectrum, so maybe toddlers and infants. They might find themselves working in hospital settings or school settings. Likewise, you could look at teenagers and early adolescents. Those people might find themselves, if we're looking at maybe where things went wrong, juvenile detention centers, etc. So the idea is that it's a pretty broad area, but the focus is on how people develop across their lives. And then the final, which happens to be the first one in list order, is industrial organizational psychology. And this is one of the newer areas of psychology. And it's studying human behavior in organizations and in the workplace. So I often use the example of Google because I think they have some very interesting things that they do for their employees. But those ideas didn't come, from nowhere. They hire industrial organizational psychologists and consultants who work with them to think about ways that people can be more productive, more motivated, happier, less stressed in their jobs. And on the flip side, what the organization gets out of it, of course, are happier employees who are willing to give it their all, who they're going to have less turnover and higher productivity and loyalty from the people who work for them. So this can also be at play when a company takes over another company, right? There's a sense of shift in the organization, the culture, and IO psychologists can work with companies to help restructure things, dissolve positions, figure out what's not working in the company, et cetera. So there's a nice demand. And this subset of psychology tends to be the highest paid, so it's a very lucrative area as well. So in terms of who should apply for this program, I think of our students as falling usually into one of these three categories. And the first are people who are already working in some related field, but they really need those credentials to solidify their position or to advance. And so maybe you've been working in healthcare for a long time, specifically working in the neonatal facility, but you don't have the educational credentials, you can't really move anywhere. So maybe a bachelor's in psychology with a concentration in developmental psychology will help you get where you need to go. So that's one group. The second group are people who are maybe in some completely different area and they're no longer happy or they're no longer feeling like that's where they should be, and they want to really shift careers. To change from one career to another can be quite difficult. But if one goes back to school, gets the credentials for the career that they want to move to, that narrative for a prospective employer makes a lot more sense, and they're willing to take a chance on you because you have these credentials and this background knowledge and skill set in this area that you're applying to. So that would be another group. And then our last group are people who are wanting to pursue a graduate degree or some advanced degree. So it doesn't always mean that they want to pursue an advanced degree, whether it's a master's or a PhD in psychology, but some kind of advanced degree. So we have quite a bit of our students who do go to graduate school end up going to MSW programs. And that has just been, by the nature of our students who come in, that's something they're interested in. But we do have students who have gone on to master's programs in psychology. We have some that continue on to our master's degree in psychology. And there are also students who decide to go to law school. Psychology is a very common undergraduate degree. Most people think of political science, but psychology is common as well for those who go to law school. If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because what happens in a courtroom or what happens in negotiations outside of a courtroom, it really completely revolves around human behavior. So it's a good knowledge base to have for people who are planning on going into law. So in terms of our curriculum, students must have 120 credits in order to graduate. That's the same across all of our bachelor's programs at CUNY. The core courses that they need are 27 credits. All of our courses in our psychology program are 3 credits. So that's 9 classes, make up your core required courses. Then you have 3 classes or 9 credits, and that makes up your concentration, which we also call the track. That's that area of specialization. And then you have general electives, which are, there's 48 general electives, and those are loose electives that students can take courses that are, you know, of interest to them. That's where you can use some of those credits, grab 12 of those 48 and concentrate them in one area like business or disability studies, and you can get a minor in that, which is great. And then you have your 39 credits, which are general education courses. Those are going to be things like English and political science, philosophy, et cetera, that broad foundation that we want every student to have who attends college. So just to give you a quick look at our core courses, that's that first group I was mentioning. Those are 9 required courses that all psychology majors must take at CUNY SPS. So there's general psych, bio, developmental, learning and cognition, social cultural approaches, stats, an introduction to research methods, which is a very basic research methods course that lots of other students take, not just psychology students, sociology, business, etc. And then we have a advanced research methods course, sorry, not business, for intro to research methods, it's disability studies, HIM, sociology, etc. And then we have an advanced research methods class that is just psychology majors who take that. And then we have something called the senior project or the capstone project that is the culmination of one's time with us. For the concentrations, which I also referred to earlier as tracks, those 3 tracks that I had talked about. So for the IO track or the organizational psych track, you must take the 2 courses on the left, psych of work and organizational change and leadership, and then one of the classes on the right. So any one of those that looks interesting to you. If you're planning on taking the psychological development track, you'll take the 2 required courses on the left, social and emotional development in children, which covers the first part of the lifespan, and then adulthood and aging, which is going to cover the second part of the lifespan. And then you take one of the courses on the right. And you'll notice that some of these courses were on the slide before, you know, that they are interchangeable, some of them, but the required ones on the left you must take for your track. And then for psychopathology, you must take clinical methods and abnormal psych, and then any one of the courses on your right. And remember that you can also use that pool of general electives that you have to take additional courses from this list that are of interest to you. But this is just what you need to take to fulfill the concentration or the track. So in terms of applying to the bachelor's program, all of our students come in with at least 24 credits from an accredited college or university. We need transcripts from any school that you've attended for which you received credit, even if it was just one class. A lot of times students apply to our program and they just send the most recent school that they attended because they figure that'll contain everything beforehand, but that's actually not the case. There's a lot of gaps in transcripts from other schools. Sometimes it'll just indicate transfer credit. We need the grades. We need all of the information. So we need a transcript from every school you've attended, even if it was 10 colleges. Those need to amount to a cumulative grade point average of 2.5. If you have a grade point average less than 2.5, you're likely going to have to write in your personal statement why that's a lower GPA and why we should still consider you. And I can tell you that yes, students have been able to enter the program with less than a 2.5, but not much less. So you really, if you don't have the 2.5 and you're not even close to that, what I would suggest is taking a couple classes as a non-matriculated student, meaning that you're not affiliated with a particular degree program, you're just taking courses with us, and those courses can then be used to up that grade point average. And what we can also help you do, and what our advisors can help you do, is target courses that are going to be useful to you in the degree. So maybe taking intro psych if you haven't taken it. So that helps up your grade point average, but it also knocks out one of your required courses for your psychology degree. There's a link that you can go to, and I should mention everyone's going to get a copy of this slide deck. So you'll get that and a video of how to apply to the program, and that'll come via the email that is associated with however you registered for this webinar. But you can also just go to our Bachelor's in Psychology page, and there's an Apply Now button there, but this is probably a better portal so we can get you the support that you need. So I just quickly want to go over some ideas of career opportunities for people who graduate with a bachelor's degree. So I want to say right off the bat, you cannot see patients with just a bachelor's degree. That's not something that you can do. There's a lot of specialized training that goes into that. Hundreds of hours of work, clinical work, practicums, supervisory work. So that's not a possibility. However, students can go into related areas in human and social services. So social work associates, housing case managers, casework in general, behavioral therapists, and that's obviously working underneath some trained PhDs and masters in health counseling or things, mental health counseling, etc. So I just want to throw that out there because so that students are or prospects are aware of what they can and cannot do with the bachelor's degree. For those who focus on things like IO psychology, they often find themselves in human resources, employment specialists, talent acquisition specialists, so finding who to hire. Maybe they'll go into marketing or market research. And if you think about research in general, market research, it's all about understanding human behavior and what people are doing and how they're doing that thing. So that is all about psychology. So it's no wonder that these places look for people who have a background in psychology. And then anything with research and data analysis, because as a psychology major, a lot of people think about it as being sort of a touchy-feely subject, but it is, but it also is very rigorous, very focused on research, statistics. So when you understand statistics and research, you're obviously quite capable of doing research and data analysis. So those are areas. And I just want to say that one of the things I would recommend you do is go on to Indeed or Monster.com or one of those other search engines. Enter bachelor's degree in psychology or put in one of the specializations, bachelor's degree in IO psychology, bachelor's degree in developmental psychology, bachelor's degree in psychopathology, and then enter in your location wherever you happen to be. And it will pull up all of the jobs for which a bachelor's in psychology is the a requirement. And that's a nice way to see the huge broad spectrum of careers that one can go into. And this on your screen is just a small subset. But there are lots of areas that you don't really think of automatically. Like a lot of people don't think of market research as being an area for psychologists, but it absolutely is. And because psychology is the study of human behavior, and human behavior finds its way into pretty much everything that we do, psychology is a very useful degree and it's in high demand. So I'm going to leave this slide up, which is my contact information. I'm Dr. Carla Marquez-Lewis. I'm the director of both the undergraduate and graduate programs in psychology. There's my email address for those of you who find it more comfortable to communicate through email. Feel free to send any questions that I don't happen to get to today, or any that come up later as you're thinking about the program or even as you're applying to the program. And then my phone number is there as well. A lot of times people are a little hesitant to call. Feel free to call. That phone is right next to me in my office, and if I'm available, I always answer it. If I'm not available, you can leave a message, and I always get back to people within 24 hours, except on weekends. If people leave me a message on Friday, I return the call on Monday. Beneath my contact information is the information of Ayanna Peoples, who is the assistant director for the program. Likewise, her phone number and email address are there, and you should feel free to contact her as well. So I want to turn it over to you now, and I want to allow you to ask any questions that you have of the program or any things that you want to know. As I say to all of my students in my courses, there are no stupid questions. If you are wondering about it, the chances are that someone else is wondering about it as well. So please feel free to send any question. I don't announce your name, I just announce the question, and I'm happy to open it up now. So someone just asked, how soon will I know if I was admitted? It's actually our admissions team who processes applications, and the sooner you get the application in, the sooner you know. The closer to the close deadline and the closer to the next semester, the longer it takes because the volumes are higher. And I do want to just stress that you want to apply as early as possible. And the reason why is there's an onboarding process. There's an online orientation for new students. There's, all of those pieces that we want to get in place for you. You want to get your books in time. And the time space between when the fall semester ends and the spring semester begins is really tight. It's somewhere between 3 and 5 weeks. So it's good to apply as early as possible. You'll know sooner as well, and that's always a nice feeling for students to know that they're starting school in the spring and get prepared. Okay, so someone says, I want to take psychology as I have lived with a 30-year chronic illness where there is not much known or understood by psychologists, and I would like to work on getting a master's in mindfulness therapy. Which kind of psychology should I focus on if I want to focus on people with chronic illness? Great question, and thanks for sending it. That would be developmental psychology, because that's looking at human development over a lifespan, and it's looking at not just emotional well-being, cognitive well-being, and psychological well-being, but also physical health, well-being, and growth. And that includes things like chronic illnesses, right, or illness in general, and how things sort of develop over time. So developmental would be the area to focus on. If you want to focus on providing therapy for people who have these kinds of chronic illnesses, there's 2 ways to do that. I would suggest focusing on developmental psychology as your undergraduate focus, even maybe your master's degree, and then getting a PhD in clinical psychology. So you kind of have the best of both worlds, that understanding of the development and then the understanding of clinical work. Another way to do it is to focus your undergraduate work on developmental psych, use your extra electives for that psychopathology track, some of those courses, clinical methods, etc. And you can combine that. For your master's degree, you can do a mental health counseling master's degree or a counseling psychology master's degree, but you can kind of embed the 2 together. So this person asks, I am currently enrolled in CSI, Psychology BS program. I am unable to finish due to family obligations, and I have an associate's degree in liberal arts. How would my credits transfer, and would I have to start all my psych classes again? That's a great question. And there's probably others that are in the same boat. So if you are transferring from another CUNY campus, I would give my same advice that I gave before: start the process early. And what we can do is put you together with an advisor. And if you look on our website and you punch in transfer credit evaluation in the search bar, it'll pull up a grid. And once we start opening it up to students to sign up, what you can do is sign up for a time slot. An advisor will reach out to you, take a look at your unofficial transcript, and talk to you about which courses we'd be able to transfer in, so that you know exactly what you're going to need to take before you even apply. So just a quick, stressor on that. You don't need to have applied to get a transfer credit evaluation here at SPS. So we can look at the courses that you've taken, see which courses match courses that we have here, and then see which courses you'll still have to take. The nice thing about CUNY is that CUNY does have a lot of interplay between all of our campuses, so students do not lose a lot of credits. And more times than not, they don't lose any credits. So we try to find places for them, whether it's moving something into an elective category, et cetera, but you should not have to start all over with your bachelor's degree or with your psychology courses. We have many of the same courses that CSI does. Other questions? Okay, so, oh, we did get another one. Hang on just a second. I don't see the whole question. Feel free to send it. Okay, so someone asked, I have 2 years of communication classes. How would this transfer? My big concern is going to CUNY is the math course. I'm assuming you probably mean the math requirement. I would reach out to, like I said, the transfer credit evaluation, because they're the ones that can do an actual transfer credit evaluation. Let's see. So the other school you attended didn't have a math requirement. Okay, so there's a couple things. One I would say is contact our advisement office, and what they can do is set up a time to do a transfer credit evaluation, so they can look at all of your communication classes and see what you need. So it's hard to say in the abstract what it is a student's going to need, and I don't want to give you any wrong information. So they can look at your actual classes that you've taken and tell you what you're going to need. If for some reason you don't have the math requirement, and you don't have anything that will qualify or is an equivalent, what they can do is tell you what your best course of action is, how you can get that math requirement, and where, whether it's here as a non-matriculated student or somewhere else, whatever the case may be. But they're the best resource. So I would reach out to our advisement team. Okay, I see you said I have a disability in math, which is why I asked. They're going to be the ones to talk to, because they have the most information, and they're the ones that do these transfer credit evaluations all the time. So they'll be able to help you with that. And if you don't get the help that you need from them, please feel free to reach out to me, to call me or send me an email, and I'm happy to do follow-up, to get you the information that you need. Any other questions? Okay, so what I would say is, happy hunting, happy research. Check on accreditation for the schools that you're interested in. And if you have any additional questions, you should always feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to call, feel free to email. Otherwise, I hope you have a really great day. I hope this was helpful to you, and thank you for joining us.